Hello, everyone. Madeline Zell here, and I have another fantastic author for you guys to check out today. I'm going to let him introduce himself and tell us a little bit about himself before we dive into his books. So take it away.
I'm J.S. Willis. I'm a fantasy author. In real life, I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for over 25 years now. I've done everything in the legal world, from being a private practitioner to a defense attorney to a judge, a magistrate, and now I'm an assistant prosecutor. So I work for the good guys now. So
Nice.
a little bit about me. In my spare time, I write, and that's pretty much, there we go.
Sweet. And I see you've got a great collection of books here. And that was one thing you mentioned. I had him fill out a questionnaire, which you guys can check out on the blog, that it kind of ranges where you can hit a variety of age groups from young to older, almost like they can grow with your books. I like that you've done that.
Yeah, that's the idea I had when I started out, because my kids read all kinds of stuff, and from anything from Harry Potter when they were way too young to read Harry Potter all the way up, and that's some of the stuff I've written started as bedtime stories for my kids, and I turned it into children's books. So I want to foster that generation of fantasy readers.
I like it. So let's start by talking about the adventures of Blacktooth, the pirate.
Sure.
In his books.
Yeah, that's the bedtime stories I was just telling you about. That started out. I wrote those stories originally for my children. The first one, Blacktooth's treasure chest, actually started out based on an actual wooden toy chest that I built for my daughter when she was really little. I built in a secret compartment and hid some trinkets in there for her. And when she actually was old enough to understand all that, we gave her the key for her birthday one year, and she found the hidden compartment and found the little ring box with a couple of rings and some other trinkets in there, and it went along with the story, and that's how all that series started. I was tired of reading princess books.
I don't blame you. I love that though. That is much cooler than princess novels, because you get to live that. You made that for her. So, and then you've got the Arcana Chronicles as well.
Yeah. I've only put out the first book in that. The second book, I'm about 60% done. It's not finished yet. I'm hoping to finish it sometime this year. Keep my fingers crossed on that. That I was aiming more toward a middle grade, lower YA type audience. Again, kind of Harry Potter inspired, that kind of contemporary urban fantasy, magic in the real world type setting. It's about a young man who discovers he can infuse everyday items and make them magical. Violate trademarks and copyrights here. He can change like a flashlight into a lightsaber, that kind of thing. And he discovers he has other powers as well, that the other side of his family has other powers that are almost anti-magic type powers, and there's a struggle between both sides of his family, and he's caught in the middle. So
wow, that's pretty intense. So, and then you have the Sphere Saga. Is that the older books?
That's my adult epic fantasy series. I've put out the first trilogy in that. Came out at the end of last year. I rapid released those in October, November, December last year. Those are my babies, I guess. Those are the ones that I've been working on and toying with for way longer than I ever should have. But I had to get my writing skills up to actually be able to write them. So that's actually where Blood is Thicker Than Magic came about. Was I had to take a break and kind of walk away from the first book in that series, Dream of the Sphere, because it humbled me to figure out and admit to myself, I can't do justice to this. I can't finish this because I don't have the skills yet. So then I went to a first person point of view book in a middle grade, and I'm not saying it's a simpler book, but it was more simplistic than an epic fantasy with multiple points of view. So it enabled me to better work on craft with.
Nice. So with switching mindsets, going from writing a specific age group, did you struggle with that? How did you get in that mindset?
I wrote them at different times, so it really wasn't as bad of a transition. I wasn't working on one and then switching to the other, if that makes any sense. I had kind of walked away from the adult epic fantasy for a period of time before I started working on and outlining the middle grade book. And then I had done that before I went back and dug out the children's books and revised those and actually expanded upon those and made them into full chapter books. It is a little weird switching to a first person point of view versus third person point of view. And the age group difference is a little strange. You just kind of have to let your characters take over, I guess, is the best way I can explain it. That's how it works for me anyway.
Yeah, no, I get that because my characters do the same thing. And like, I'll do a rough outline and they just like are like, no, we're just going to take it over here. And like, okay, I didn't see that coming. So,
yeah.
And on writing for the middle grade, do you find, what is your method with doing that? Did you have like an idea in mind when you started those?
I had an idea. The whole idea of the two different types of powers in the family was the core idea. And I'm an outliner by nature, so I started building an outline around that. But it was a very general, broad outline, more so than what I did do with the epic fantasy books. I did a lot of discovery writing in that, which I don't usually do, but it worked, and it actually worked. For some reason, it seemed to work better with the first person point of view. I got in the head of my main character, and he told the story from his point of view, and it just kind of flowed.
That is awesome. Like I find it fascinating that you created such a wide range for your readers. Like I'm fascinated with that. And you mentioned you're an outliner, so you're more of a planner than a pantser, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, most definitely.
What does your writing routine typically look like with that?
My outlines are more like I said, on a broad scale, like top down. I tend to outline events and ideas, knowing where I'm heading, hopefully knowing where the ending is heading, even though it may change by the time I get there. And then I kind of discovery write, pants write between those events. Like I just finished the first 2 chapters of the new book, and the second chapter I finished today, it went in a totally different direction that I
Don't you love when it does that though?
Yeah, I do. I love it, and I'll go back and adjust the outline. I mean, actually, I had incorporated some ideas that kind of wrecked 2 chapters down the road, but I'll just go back and course correct on the outline and adapt it. But it opened up some doors that had been closed earlier, and it was good because my mind writing the outline and developing the story better, I think.
So with your current work in progress, your characters, where did you get the inspiration and kind of like structure for them?
What I'm working on now is actually the next book in the Sphere Saga. So it's actually book 4, but it's the first book in a new trilogy. It's most of the same characters, but there are some new characters. And like the question you asked, it's interesting because the character I started out the book with is a character that has kind of sprung from a different part of the world that never gets seen in the original trilogy. It does tangentially, not by a point of view character. So they're like, these people are the enemy empire in the second book of the first trilogy, and they're the bad guys, so you don't get to know them from their point of view. Everybody's the hero of their own story, even the villains. So yeah, I thought it would be interesting to take that idea. I wanted to get to know what those people had done in that part of the world, and that's where that character came from.
Nice. So Jay, I'm going to throw you for a loop. What is something readers don't know about you?
Something readers don't know about me?
Yes.
I'm a guardian of the Holy Grail.
Sweet.
That's kind of strange. No, actually, to spoil it, but it's been around so long that if you haven't seen it or don't know by now, Monty Python's Spamalot, the musical. If you're sitting in a certain seat during the show, they pull you up on stage and try to embarrass you and give you an actual trophy that is the Holy Grail, and sing about you and make some stories. And I happen to have that seat for the touring show for our town. I don't even remember what year it was. It was a long time ago. So I actually still have it, and they give you a certificate and you get a picture. The picture's actually on my website. They have a picture, or they take a picture on the stage with you and the cast and the knights on stage in the middle of the music, and they give you the picture to take home with you. So
that is awesome. It's been a long time since I've watched it, but like, because I've never seen like a live action show. I've only watched the movie, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, the musical's a little different, but if you ever have a chance to go, I think it's seat D1, but I can't remember why. But I just had the good luck or bad luck, depending on your point of view, to have that seat the night that we went and got drug up on stage. So it was fun.
Cool.
You just kind of have to roll with it.
Yeah, no kidding. Because I mean, it's not like you can't just not. I mean, I guess you could not go up there, but it might make it worse if you argue with someone about.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So, are you a morning, afternoon, or night owl?
I hate mornings, but by necessity for my job and actually for writing, I have to get up and make myself go. So I'm not actually a morning person, and people know I'm not a morning person, but I was productive in the mornings just by necessity. Throughout college and law school and everything, I was a night owl, but I've kind of, as I've gotten older, I've gotten away from that and have to go to bed by a certain time so I can get up and work the next morning and not fall asleep during the day.
Oh, yes. No, I get that. I feel like parenthood kind of changed that a little bit, maybe, because I have always been like able to, before I had my son, I was able to balance my schedule better, getting up at a decent time and stay up late. Now I'm like, it gets like 9:30. I'm like, okay, I got to go to bed soon.
Oh yeah, exactly. So yeah, on weekends, I have to get up before everybody else in the household. So I have a couple of hours of quiet to try to get some writing and some other work done. And that way we get the rest of the day to spend family time and do whatever else needs to be done, whatever activities need to be done.
Those are the treasured hours, I call them, because it's peaceful, even though like, they're going to be up soon, like just getting that sitting with your cup of coffee in the quiet.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Why can't it be more like this on a regular basis?
Yeah.
But you enjoy chaos.
Yeah. And now that my son's much older, I have to get up earlier before he does, so I can have time on the Xbox, because we have to fight our Xbox time.
Yeah. I'm going to have to cross that boat in a couple of years. My son is already trying to get into video games. He's 4, and dad has all kinds of stuff going on. Sometimes he's either on the computer when I'm not on the computer, or playing on the Xbox. I'm like, or the PlayStation. I'm just like,
it's inevitable. It's inevitable.
Yeah. So I'm just like, let's just hang out a few more years before you do that. So, because I remember when my nephew got into it, I'm just like, not ready for it.
Yeah. Put it off as long as you can.
Yes. So with your writing, do you have an author or a favorite author that that's inspired you with your books?
Robert Jordan, Wheel of Time.
Yes.
And his successor, Brandon Sanderson. Took over and finished the Wheel of Time, and that's how I got to read his first book, and that's how I got to know him and followed his career ever since. And he's just kind of the natural successor. Brandon Sanderson's writing's so much different than Robert Jordan's, but epic fantasy is my true love, and that's and Brandon Sanderson's taken it a totally different direction. He's evolved the genre.
Yeah, he has. He's making some big moves too. So, because I heard this morning he's actually going to indie publishing. So.
Oh yeah, the Kickstarter's all the rage talking.
Yeah, they were talking about it this morning. I was like, man, I need to read up on that, because I've been like out of the loop this week.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You need to see what he did. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, I've heard good things about it. Like I watched This Week in Indies this morning, and that was one of the big things they talked about. I was like, wow, I had no idea. So
yeah, I didn't look to see where it is now. Last I checked, it was up to 22 million.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot. That is a lot. So with your writing, do you have a writing quirk, or maybe even recurring themes that show up in your books?
I don't know how to call it a quirk, but magic is central to pretty much everything I write. The Blacktooth books, the children's books, not quite as much, but it's there. I've always been fascinated by magic, not like David Copperfield, the magician, and Penn, even though I love that too, but just magic. I mean, from reading Dragonlance when I was in high school all the way up through the Wheel of Time. I mean, just different takes on magic, and again, Brandon Sanderson has his own laws of magic, and he's the master of that. And I want to contribute to that dialogue. That's my hope. Yeah. That I can come up with something original to throw out there and add some different ideas for magic and fantasy.
Sweet. So what books do you have planned going forward with your series?
I'm hoping to do, and I'm outlining a second trilogy in the Sphere Saga, the epic fantasy. I'm working on the first book in that new trilogy right now. I'm also hoping to get the second book in the middle grade series in the Arcana Chronicles done. It's about 60% written. I know where I'm going with it. It's just I kind of took a break from it during the pandemic and switched back my focus to the epic fantasy stuff because I had the time to devote to it because I couldn't leave the house. So to get away from my family, so we wouldn't, drive each other crazy, I would, hide myself in my laptop and write, and was able to knock those 3 books out and finish them off. After that, I want to write another couple of the Blacktooth books, but I think like a lot of writers, I have a file of my idea file of different story ideas and things that I want to write. Hopefully I'll get to them eventually. But for now, I want to kind of stick with these and finish these off as much as I can. Go with these 3 series.
Your writing idea file, do you keep it in a notebook or do you keep it on something digital?
Digital. It's digital in the cloud and different formats in different places and on thumb drives, on CDs and DVDs. It's try to back stuff up as much as possible. But yeah.
Yes, no, that's a great idea. I actually had this computer that I wear on right now crashed a couple weeks ago, and I thought I lost everything. Scared the bejesus out of me. Which I mean, I wasn't too worried because most of my manuscripts, I keep that on a Google Drive just in case that kind of happened. But all of my cover art and images and stuff just was
that's a nightmare.
Yeah, it was. It scared me so bad. But as you saw before the show, my husband's the techie boy, and he is
technical difficulties are always a problem, but there's always a way.
Never know when they're going to happen too.
No, exactly. At the worst time possible.
Yes, no kidding. And I learned that lesson the hard way about backing stuff up when I was in college. It was 2 weeks till finals, and I had a huge paper that I had been working on, and my laptop completely crashed and bit the dust. I took it into have it worked on, and they could not recover that file. So I ended up having to go back through and redo the whole thing. Stir crazy coffee, caffeine, haze, but I got it done. And I was yep, never again. I'm going to keep flash drives. I don't care. This stuff's going on a separate thing. No more.
Yep. Oh. When I started writing the first Sphere Saga book, I was saving stuff to the cloud on Dropbox because Dropbox was one of the first cloud storage that came out, and my Dropbox crashed, and I had to go through a recovery process, and they were able to get most of everything back, but I did lose a couple chapters in one of the early drafts of that book, and had to totally rewrite those. So, which it's been rewritten 100 times since then.
Yeah,
so it didn't matter ultimately, but yeah, that was frightening. I was not happy about that.
Man, I would lose it if my Google Drive crashed. So, because I've got so much saved on there. Knock on wood that it doesn't happen. So you mentioned earlier that most of your books you said are written in third person, correct? And yes. The book Blood is Thicker Than Magic is written in first person. Did you find that it was easier writing in one of those versus the other?
it's hard to transition to between the two, but once I did and I stayed in first person, transitioning from third, it was easy. I wouldn't say it's easier to write that way, but it seemed to flow a lot quicker, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I'll sit down and I won't have a lot of time, so I may only be able to get in a couple hundred words or whatever, and I have to go back and kind of get in the swing of things to hit that flow state to get something going. It seems like first person for me works a little bit. It comes a little bit quicker doing that. I don't know why. It's been a while since I've written anything first person, but in hindsight, when I go back to that first person and doing that second book in that series, I don't think it'll take me as long to get into it. So I don't know why that is, and I may be unique in that. But
no, I actually agree with you on that, because I ended up writing most of my stuff in first person versus third person, and it does seem to flow easier. And maybe it's because you're putting yourself in that character's like shoes, and it's like it's happening to you. But yeah. So I get that.
Yeah, I think so. I think it makes a difference when you've got different point of view characters, because you have to. It's hard to shift gears. So I think doing first person, it just seems to go better, easier.
Yeah. And moving forward, do you think you'll continue to like switch back and forth, or do you think you'll stick with one type?
It depends on what I'm writing. In that series, in the middle grade YA series, I'll probably stick to first person. The epic fantasy's got to be third. I wouldn't want to do first person and do multiple characters in first person. I know people have done that, but I don't know that I can pull that off. I don't know that I even want to try pulling that off.
Yeah, no, it's challenging for sure, because I've done it, and it's switching back and forth. It's like you have to pause almost. And I think one of my books, I ended up going through and writing all of one person's stuff throughout the story, and like visualizing everybody else that's like actively in it, and then going back and plugging their stuff in, because it just made it seem easier staying in one.
Yeah, I had considered trying that, and that's the way I was thinking about doing that though. So I'm interested to hear you say that, because if I ever decide to do it, that was what I was thinking of doing, was just approaching it from one character all the way through, and then go back and fill in the gaps, I suppose, with the other character's point of view.
Yeah, and I found it easier, and I think that was the last book I wrote in that series, and I haven't done it like multiple point of view from like different characters yet, because the series I'm working on right now is all one person, but it's in first person too, like it's coming from her point of view. But it does, like, I feel like you're able to channel that character better doing that.
So. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So do you have a preference when you read books? Do you prefer ebooks, paperbacks, or hardbacks?
I hate to say it, because I never thought I would not want to have a physical book in my hand. But for me right now, I've transitioned to a lot of audio, because most of the time that I have to read is in the car going to and from work, or the things like that. So I've been doing a lot of audio. So it's either audio or ebook for me now. And I hate it, because I love physical books.
Yeah.
I switched to ebooks a long while ago and was doing mostly ebooks, but now I'm getting into the audio. I really do enjoy the audiobooks.
I've been finding myself slowly gravitating towards the audio too. It's easier to finish and do stuff like around the house and stuff during the day, listening to it, or like you said, driving and listening to it, depending on how much you're on the road.
Well, and that's when I started it, because when my kids were still, my son's still in high school, but when both my kids were still in high school, we were driving all over the place. So I would have to drive, and I might be sitting there waiting for them to finish a practice and then take them to the next activity. So it was just natural to listen to the audiobooks in the car, and you got all that time to kill. So it was like, I can't write, because unlike my daughter who writes things on her phone, which I do not understand and do, I have to have a keyboard in front of me. I can't do it with my thumbs on a small screen. The audiobooks just made sense.
Yeah. And on that typing note, I've actually been doing a little bit of typing on my phone too. It is easier to do on the keyboard, but like my son, he likes to keep me away from the keyboard a lot. And like, here, mom, let me sit in your lap. So it's like, okay, I'm just gonna type this idea out and then we'll go do this. Like, that's fine, kind of stuff. But have you also done any dictating to work on stories?
I cannot dictate at all. I don't. When I was in college, that's how I learned to write. It comes through my fingers. I'm a better writer than I am a speaker. So I can't. I'm an attorney. That doesn't make any sense.
No, it does. It does. It's different. Like,
but I prefer writing briefs as opposed to doing stuff orally anyway. So yeah, it flows through my fingers anyway, because I took typing in high school. I'm that old. I mean, they still taught typing, and I actually do type with all my fingers on the right keys. It drives me crazy watching my kids, doing.
Oh gosh, they chicken peck. Oh,
but they get so used to it that they're getting as fast as I am. I don't understand it, but I touch type. That's just the way I've always done it.
Man, I didn't even think about that, like as like kids today not having to like getting to learn that, because I had a typing class when I was younger too. My school was very old school and it took them forever to like get caught up on like newer stuff. Yeah. And like we had the really, really old computers, and I remember like them covering up our hands to learn how to type and stuff. Yeah. It's just like, this is not easy. And then they would time us how many words we could get out per minute. It's like, oh.
I'm old enough to my typing class in high school, we actually used typewriters.
Oh.
Didn't have, we did have computers, but they were old, like really, really old Apple IIe.
Yeah. The really like little, I always call them old now. At the time they were not old.
Yeah. So. Oh yeah. That was cutting edge stuff back then. Those green monitors.
Yes, they were the huge bulky things, but like I feel like that's a skill that still needs to be taught, as well as with like cursive writing too, because when I handwrite all my stuff, like when I do write it, because I switch back and forth, I write in cursive, and it's printing is just awkward for me because I'm like, no.
Yeah, mine's a mishmash between. I mean, it'll be 3 letters in cursive and then 4 letters in printed. It's just. And I can't read it after I read it anyway. So
I'll start out, if I try to print, I get distracted and it turns into cursive, and I'm like, oh, well, we see what that meant. So what, with you having a busy schedule like you do, and you said writing is your hobby, what do you do for self-care to help keep the creativity flowing, to keep writer's block away, and just keep your mental health like good?
Play a lot of games. I actually play video games, even though I get frustrated when I throw the controller, like we talked about. The older you get, you lose that manual dexterity. So I try to keep up with my son, and I can't, and it frustrates me. My family always watches a lot of movies. I mean, from the time my kids were little, we always had like Friday night, either game night or movie night. I mean, we would alternate. One week it'd be we'd play board games all night, and the next week we'd watch movies all night. So I watch a lot of movies, watch a lot of TV, and I intentionally try to pick well-written dialogues type shows to try to keep in the back of my mind and try to improve my writing skills listening to well-written dialogue. Although watching just movies that are fun is always good for your mental health too. So yeah, I do a lot of that. It's always games or movies or TV.
Nice. I like that. Self-care, I'm one of those. I try to ask everybody I interview what their self-care is, because I feel self-care is really important, especially like the way the world is right now with like, I don't even know where we're at technically in this pandemic. It's just there. So I don't know where it's going, but with everything that's crazy, all the anxiety and depression and everything that's higher, and like the world's shifted a little bit. So it's important to kind of like keep a focus on self-care. And I'm always looking for new ideas to share and like tips to kind of help others. So.
Yeah, I used to read a lot, but I hate it. I need to read more, but if I'm actively trying to write stuff, I try to shy away from reading too much because I don't want it to influence me. Because I've had that happen. I'll be writing something and it's like, oh man, I just read something and I can't use that, and then you got to get rid of that, and because you get those unconscious influences sometimes. But so that's hard. That's hard as a writer, keeping that balance between you need to read a lot, but you don't want it to influence your writing too much or to take it over.
Yeah, no, I get that because I've always been an avid reader before I became an author. And it's hard sometimes to just like turn off the story that you've been reading as
Yeah.
you write, because it wants to just like invade like nonchalantly, like, yeah, I'm just gonna slide into here.
Yep.
So, because I ended up like, I caught myself writing in, because the books I'm working on right now are very dark fantasy, like doesn't really have any science fiction stuff in it, but a science fiction thing kind of slipped in there. And I'm like, wait, how am I going to make this work? I don't think I can make this work. Because like,
Yeah.
I highlighted it and like, I'll just come back to this section later, and just
Yeah.
kept going. So it's like,
Yeah,
we'll just
that happen.
find something to replace that with. And on another question, your world building for this series, for all your books, not just like one series, where do you find the inspiration for that?
Well, I was a history major and I'm an attorney, so I've got a lot of legal background and I've got a lot of history background. I've got a whole shelf full of history textbooks and timelines, and I was in the World War II. I'm a World War II buff. I'm a medieval history buff, so all of that plays into my world building. As silly as it sounds, I mean, even in college, I knew I wanted to write, but I didn't, I was in college and I didn't have a whole lot of time to write. So I even took classes that I just needed to fill in gaps. I was like, well, maybe this will come in handy one day. So I took a geology class, and I had to have a physical education class. So I actually took a folk dance class in college. I can justify this because someday I might be able to look back on this and use it in my writing. I don't think I ever have, but I might yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's that. That, and just it's hard not to have your own personal life experiences play into your world building too. That's why, like, I've always loved magic, so magic always enters into my world building. Politics and religion always enter into my world building because I'm fascinated by it, because I was a history and political science major in college, and that's, you spend 4 years of college and that's what you're focusing on. It's going to get burned into your brain.
Yeah, I feel that, because I ended up putting more like theology kind of stuff in my books than I intended to. And I had somebody point it out recently and I was like, I didn't realize I did that. So
yeah. Oh yeah. I almost had a religion major. It was probably actually a minor, and I just didn't recognize it because my friends and I just took religion classes in college too, just to fill in the gaps. And it was a lot of philosophy and a lot of, studying different world religions and all that kind of stuff.
We were required to take them at the college, because I graduated from a private Christian college. So there was all the Christian-based classes, religion-based, because they weren't just Christian-based. They were all like touched on other different religions, which was really cool. I enjoyed learning about them, and like it gave me a broader perspective of what is out there in the world. But I didn't realize it was going to slip into my writing like it did. So
oh yeah,
which is really cool too. But on another question. We're coming up on the end here, so I just got a couple questions left for you. Sure. If you could write in another genre besides fantasy, what is something you could maybe see yourself writing in the future or exploring into?
I've dabbled in science fiction, but I've done some sci-fi short stories, but I don't do a lot of science fiction because I don't like hard sci-fi, and I wouldn't be very good at hard sci-fi. Historical fiction. I'm actually kind of tinkering with historical fiction in the second Arcana Chronicles book, because there's a World War II component. That's part of that book is set in World War II. Mm-hmm. So I've done some reading and some historical fiction and set in World War II, and I like that idea. It's hard for me to get away from fantasy. I'm not a crime procedural person, even though I'm a lawyer. I mean, my mother never understood that. She's like, well, why don't you read John Grisham? Why don't you read this? And I would ask her, well, do you want to read about what you do at work all day, hours a day? No. So, well, there you go. That's
exactly.
I don't, I live it every day. I need to get away from it. That's why I read and write fantasy. I need to get away from this real world horror.
It's an escape. No, I get that, because I'm the same way.
I don't read horror, but I would like to write some horror someday. So I probably need to read some horror. I mean, I've read some horror, but not a whole lot. Horror is an interesting genre. I would like to learn more about it. But if I had to pick something that I've never done anything with, horror would probably be it.
I think you could do it. It would be a lot of fun, and you could just be creative with it. So
Yeah, it would be interesting. Growing up, I watched horror movies all the time. I mean, so I've got experience in that part of the genre, just not the written part.
did you watch a lot of Stephen King and stuff growing up too?
Oh yeah.
I feel like he's like almost the go-to for horror stuff. So
yeah, I read and watched a lot of Stephen King stuff growing up. You know, Nightmare on Elm Street's always a favorite, classic. You know, that kind of horror. I don't like the gory slasher burn horror that that Saw stuff. No, that's not for me.
Yeah, I can't watch it. I've read some books that are pretty gory, but like seeing it on the screen versus reading it.
Psychological horror, Silence of the Lambs. I mean, that scared the crap out of me.
I believe it. Ooh, man. I could not finish it. So, but I was never one for scary movies, but I don't know why, but I can read the books. Makes no sense because my imagination is a little bit more there.
Yeah, but seeing it on screen is more visceral, I think. I mean, it's talking to your conscience to see it portrayed in front of you as opposed to reading it.
Yes. And finally, if somebody came to you that is aspiring to be a writer, an author, or maybe is a brand new author just starting their journey, what advice would you give them?
Some of the things we've talked about. Read a lot. Read as much in what you like to read and what you plan on writing or want to write, because you need to be conversant in the genre that you're going to be writing in, and write as much as you can and make time for the writing. That's one regret I have is I'm a recovering World of Warcraft player. If I had spent as much time playing World of Warcraft writing, my career would be leaps and bounds ahead. But once I got off the World of Warcraft and moved on to other things, I was actually able to spend more time writing. So, it's, I guess my best advice would be you've got to try to find a balance in your life to let you write. And sometimes you have to sacrifice and give up things to do that. And if you can't do that, then you might as well put it aside and not do it.
Yeah. Well, great. Go ahead and tell our listeners where they can find you.
I'm on most social media, but I'm on Facebook the most. My website is JS Willis, my name spelled out, .net. All my books are on Amazon, but I am on Facebook. I'm even on TikTok. My daughter talked me into it. I'm still trying to figure it out, but it is what it is. I don't do a whole lot on TikTok, Twitter, or Instagram, but I do have accounts on there. So yeah, Facebook's, I'm old, so I'm an old Facebook guy. So Facebook and my webpage and my Amazon author page. That's where you can find my stuff.
Excellent. Jay, thank you so much for hanging out with me on the show today.
Oh, thank you. It's been a great time.
We'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for watching, everybody.